watching A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanov, and let's see the top stories. Donald Trump says there will likely be more U.S. deaths as Iran strikes continue. The UK rules out an offensive role after regional attacks but backs defensive measures. And oil prices surge and markets fall as Iran strikes raise fears over shipping. U.S. and Israeli strikes have escalated tensions across the Middle East, hitting Iran, Lebanon, Iraq and Bahrain. Tehran and Beirut face heavy attacks, while U.S. forces report casualties as ongoing operations continue.
U.S. President Donald Trump said on Sunday combat operations in Iran are ongoing and will continue until all of Washington's objectives are achieved. In a video posted on the Truth Social platform, Trump confirmed that 3 U.S. service members had been killed and warned there could be further losses, vowing to avenge the deaths of Americans.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved. We have very strong objectives. They could have done something 2 weeks ago, but they just couldn't get there.
Tehran was hit by intense strikes on Sunday night, with explosions, fires and air raid sirens across the city. The assault began around 2100, hitting multiple sites, including state-run IRIB facilities. The Israel Defense Forces targeted the IRGC headquarters, while Israel plans to call up 100,000 reservists along borders and in contested areas. Prime Minister Netanyahu said airstrikes are intensifying. U.S. President Trump said 48 senior Iranian officials had been killed, with 3 U.S. service members dead and 5 wounded. The IRGC launched the 9th wave of Operation True Promise 4. Explosions were also reported in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv and other parts of Israel. 2 drones reportedly targeted the U.S. Victoria military base near Baghdad International Airport. 1 drone fell inside the base's special operations area, and the other was intercepted by U.S. air defenses. The logistics support center was reportedly a target. No details on casualties or damage have been released, and investigations are ongoing. Thick smoke was seen over Manama on Sunday after what appeared to be Iranian strikes hit Bahrain's main U.S. naval base. The fire came from the base, which hosts the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet HQ. After attacks by Israel and the U.S., Iran said it had retaliated against Israeli and nearby U.S. targets across the Arabian Gulf. On Monday, Israel carried out airstrikes on Hezbollah-controlled southern Beirut after rocket and drone attacks on Israel. Over a dozen explosions were reported, forcing residents to flee. The strikes targeted senior Hezbollah members in Dahiyeh, with evacuation warnings for villages in southern and eastern Lebanon. Several rockets from Lebanon landed in open areas. 1 was intercepted, and no casualties or damage were reported.
Iran's top national security official Ali Larijani said Iran will not enter into talks with the United States, warning that Trump's actions have plunged the region into chaos and increased the risk of further American troop casualties. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated that Tehran remains open to diplomacy, describing Iran's attacks on U.S. positions in the Gulf as defensive and emphasizing that neighboring countries are not being targeted.
Well, Iran has been always open to diplomacy, and I think we have a very good record of that. Contrary to Americans, that their record is very bad and very negative. You know, this is the second time that we negotiated with Americans and they decided to attack us right in the middle of negotiation. So the first, rocket or missile or whatever that they fired hits the negotiation table. It happened exactly the same last June. We had another experience. We negotiated with them together with other members of P5+1, and we concluded the deal in 2015. And it was the US who withdrew with no justification, with no reason. And Iran remained committed to that deal as long as it was, in place. So nobody can question Iran's, good faith and readiness for diplomacy, for talks. Well, actually, as you know, we have no problem with our countries in the other side of the Persian Gulf. We have friendly relations and good neighborly relations with all of them, and we are determined to continue this relation.
The security situation across Israel has deteriorated sharply overnight, with incoming fire reported in several cities and emergency services responding to casualties. At the same time, fighting has broadened beyond Israel's immediate borders. Armed exchanges with Hezbollah have intensified along the northern frontier, and Israeli forces are carrying out further operations in Lebanon. Maria Rodriguez-Abalde has more details from Tel Aviv.
A difficult night across all of Israel, with constant alerts. In Jerusalem, a missile were not intercepted and struck on an avenue, hitting several cars with 7 people injured. The war in the Middle East continues, and as Netanyahu had announced, the attacks will intensify in the coming hours. Hezbollah joins the war against Israel. The IDF confirmed 6 rockets were launched at Haifa in the latest barrage. At the same time, Israel launched dozens of strikes in Lebanon and allegedly ended the lives of several of their top officials. The Lebanese Ministry of Health confirmed at least 31 deaths in IDF attacks, and Israeli security sources say that the campaign in Lebanon could include a ground operation. Multiple fronts and epic fury operation. Iran attacked 10 countries in Middle East so far. Meanwhile, Washington said that 3 USA military personnel have been killed and 5 seriously wounded, and also new allies such as the announcements of France, Germany and the United Kingdom prepare to participate in operations to destroy Iran's capabilities. These countries agreed to coordinate with the European Union. At least USA can use their military bases.
The United Nations atomic monitoring body, the International Atomic Energy Agency, headed by Director General Rafael Grossi, has called an urgent meeting of its Board of Governors in Vienna. This move comes to examine the latest U.S., Israeli and Iranian military actions, with delegations from several nations, including Washington and Tehran, in attendance. Discussions are underway. The UK, France and Germany have announced that they are willing to take defensive actions to destroy any potential threats posed by Iran. But many of the European Union's member states remain divided over the legality of the US and Israel strikes on Iran and how to respond going forward. William Denslow reports from Brussels.
At the conclusion of Sunday's emergency meeting of EU foreign ministers, the European Union's top diplomat and foreign affairs chief, Kai Kallas, released a statement on behalf of the European Union in which she said that Iranian attacks on the region were inexcusable. She said that she sees the situation with utmost concern, calling for a maximum restraint. She also said that actions are being taken to ensure that EU citizens in the wider region are protected. Now, member states are divided on this issue, especially the legality of the strikes by the US and Israel under international law. We've seen that play out in comments from several EU leaders. We've heard from Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain. He says that he rejects the unilateral military action by both the US and Israel. On the other hand, we've heard from the likes of Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor. He says that this is not a time to lecture our allies. He says that despite doubts that he may have, he shares many of the same goals. This really highlights the precarious position the EU is standing on while they have called for diplomacy and for negotiations to resolve these issues, most notably Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program. Big questions about the response the US took, how it's conducting its business on the international stage, but at the same time not wanting to isolate themselves from the US. We've already heard from one prominent US Senator, Lindsey Graham, describing the EU's response as pathetic, really suggesting the position that the EU finds itself in. Now, we have had a stance from the E3, the group of the UK, France and Germany, taking more of a proactive stance in the region, saying they are ready to take what they describe as defensive actions to destroy threats at their source. So really saying they could conceivably target such as where drones are coming from in Iran, as well as their missiles. We also know that France has announced that it is deploying one of its aircraft carriers to the region. So while some in Europe are willing to take further action, seemingly aligning a little closer with the US, there is certainly also some trepidation from other EU member states. This all comes as the European Commission is holding a security college on Monday to discuss this issue of how the EU should proceed during these incredibly precarious times for the region. Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, warns that the safety in the Middle East and in the wider region is interwoven with Europe, and threats that Cyprus could be targeted with missiles just shows and gives credence to quite how interlinked that really is. William Denslow, Frey News in Brussels.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says Britain was not involved in the US-Israel operation that killed Iran's supreme leader and will not join further offensive action. But after retaliatory missile attacks hit sites where British nationals were staying, London says destroying launch capabilities is now necessary to protect lives.
The United States has requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose. We have taken the decision to accept this request to prevent Iran firing missiles across the region, killing innocent civilians, putting British lives at risk, and hitting countries that have not been involved. I want to be very clear. We all remember the mistakes of Iraq, and we have learned those lessons. We were not involved in the initial strikes on Iran, and we will not join offensive action now.
Oil prices have surged and stock markets have fallen after US and Israeli strikes on Iran raised fears over shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Investors are also moving money into gold.
Oil prices jumped sharply at the start of trading after the United States and Israel carried out major strikes on Iran, escalating the conflict in the Gulf. Brent crude briefly surged by more than 10% in early trading before easing back, but it remains significantly higher. At the same time, stock markets across Asia fell as traders reacted to concerns over possible supply disruptions. Gold prices climbed as investors sought safer assets. The immediate concern is the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil and large volumes of liquefied natural gas pass each day. Following the strikes, said vessels had come under attack near the area. Some shipping companies have halted transit and tanker traffic has slowed, with vessels waiting on either side of the strait. Iran has not formally announced a closure, but media reports say Tehran warned tankers that no ships would be allowed to pass. OPEC Plus has agreed a modest increase in output, yet experts say that will not matter if shipments cannot move. Economists say the key factor now is duration. If tensions ease quickly, markets may stabilize. If fighting continues, energy prices could remain elevated, adding further strain to the global economy.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney met Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi on Monday. The visit aims to improve ties between the two countries after years of tension over security and political disputes. Carney described his trip as a mission to strengthen economic connections. He is also seeking closer trade links with China and the Middle East, hoping to reduce Canada's dependence on the United States and promote what he calls a new global trading order among middle power nations. Jean-Jacques Bissep, Secretary General of the Popular Union for the Liberation of Guadeloupe, says he was arrested by Belgian authorities after attending a conference on colonialism in Baku, organized by the Baku Initiative Group. He was questioned for about half an hour upon arrival in Belgium. Bissep claims that the move was politically motivated and says French authorities were aware of his participation. He commented the incident in an interview to A News.
The French authorities were aware of this conference, and they were also aware of my participation in this conference. And that is indeed what explains why they apprehended me in Belgium. It's because I was at this GIB conference. This arrest and this interrogation by the Belgian Federal Police are directly connected to the fact that I participated in this conference.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the escalating Middle East war and its global security implications. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News. The Middle East is sliding deeper into a dangerous regional war. President Donald Trump says the U.S. military operation against Iran could last up to 4 weeks, as Washington confirms its first American casualties. Iran is striking U.S. and allied assets across the Gulf, following the killing of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, while Israel opens a new front against Hezbollah in Lebanon. With the Strait of Hormuz under threat, U.S. embassies on high alert, and European leaders warning of spillover, fears are growing of a conflict that could reshape regional and global security. To help us unpack these rapidly unfolding developments, I'm joined by Klaus Jørgens, political analyst with Economy First Limited, speaking to us from London. Mr. Jørgens, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me. Thank you.
So, Mr. Jørgens, President Donald Trump says this operation could last up to 4 weeks. Is that realistic militarily, and how significant is the confirmation of the first U.S. casualties in shaping Washington's next steps?
Well, it is, of course, a very tricky and almost risky topic to talk about. But I will come back to my own background in a minute. Before directly answering your question about the 4 weeks, could it militarily work? What I really want to say, and I'm very outspoken here, albeit still with diplomatic words, the attack on Iran was unprovoked, unnecessary, and unlawful. And please quote me. Other people have said the same, and almost in the same direction. Think about the Spanish government. I think exactly at a time when negotiations might have progressed with Iran, now calling it a preemptive strike is almost cynical, because I do not see any confirmation that Iran had actually planned, for example, to attack Israel as out of nowhere. Now, this is the first point I want to make. Yes, 4 weeks, we know the situation. Very often it is said, oh, it will only last a couple of days and then it is over. But attacking Iran is a totally different ballgame, politically speaking. Iran has many allies and partners, not only within the region, but even on a global scale. Iran is not a small rogue state, as some might want us to believe. Unfortunately, every independent nation state has the right to retaliate And this is a tinderbox, as I would call it now, in the wider region. I hope the worst can still be avoided, but talking about worst, what happened at the girls' school, and if I'm not mistaken, by now about 180 young girls have been killed by a strike on an Iranian school. Totally not necessary, a bloodshed which should have never taken place. And I think journalists and political analysts should be allowed to come to terms with the situation and make frank statements. My sad assumption is the 4-week scenario will be prolonged.
Mr. Jürgens, what does the killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei mean for Iran's internal stability and command structure?
Yes, what I think was the assumption that when the supreme leader would be no longer alive, that everything will change overnight. I would call this one of the biggest miscalculations President Trump's administration so far has actually engaged in. My worry is that, yes, there was criticism towards the supreme leader. Yes, of course. But at the same time, now the floodgates are opening to have even more hardliners coming to power, because the people in Iran, despite having criticized their late supreme leader, they will not want to be bombed. They will not want to be wiped out of the map of nation states. I think this is a very dangerous situation, and believe me, I think it was a huge miscalculation. Get rid of the supreme leader and automatically Iran will be a totally new country. I don't know who advised Donald Trump on this one. Yes, a great threat to further stability. There will be demonstrations in Iran, there will be manifestations, same like in the past. But the question is, what kind of Iran do the Iranians actually really want? And if I'm not wrong, they don't want to be lectured by the West or by Israel about how to run their own country.
In your opinion, can Iran sustain coordinated attacks across Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait and the wider Gulf simultaneously? And how vulnerable are Gulf states right now?
Well, let me give you a personal intake. I have good friends in Qatar. And now the initial assumption was when a drone was spotted, or a flying object, call it like this, over the skyscrapers in Doha, the first one, it was filmed and taped, and my friend sent it to me. And the initial assumption was, of course, that this is Israel attacking Qatar. And then I said, what is going on? Then it transpired it was actually Iran retaliating, if I'm not mistaken. Last night I got another video from friends showing the night sky ablaze with weaponry and attacks. And I don't see that Iran, for an extended period of time, can basically retaliate into any direction, northeast, southwest. I think it is a logic decision to retaliate. But as we see so often in war, and any war has to be avoided, but if this has any way out, both the US and its allies, and Israel, of course, and Iran must at one point sit at a negotiating table to prohibit that the entire Middle East explodes. You mentioned the 4 weeks. I'm not that optimistic. But secondly, I don't think that Iran has the military capability alone to sustain a path of retaliation for, I would say, longer than 1 or 2 weeks maximum.
So how worried should Europe be after the attack near the UK base at Akrotiri in Cyprus? And is Cyprus emerging as a new strategic pressure point in this conflict?
Well, there are rumors that the Wings of Zion airplane, now I'm not speculating who or who not, was actually on board. had to circle for up to 4 hours off the coast of Israel, basically having planned to touch down in Cyprus. And the Cypriots simply said, no, this would put us onto the map of becoming a target. Now, if we talk about Cyprus as such, I think Cyprus will not try to engage in this conflict at all. Cyprus has become, the Republic of Cyprus, a safe haven for, put it like this, investments and rich people putting their money there. That includes many nationalities. Think about Russia, think about Israel, think about others. So I think Cyprus is off. Now, you mentioned the European nations and the UK, of course, in particular. Now, I was alerted actually by the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. It was in the middle of the night actually talking about Turkey and saying that regional instability might occur at any minute, and please be prepared and follow the news. Now, of course, we know that this attack by Israel and the United States had been planned approximately 4 weeks in advance. And then at night, I realized something bad might be happening. Then the Prime Minister only yesterday announced, yes, that US military might use UK bases in this, what they call a fight against Iran, which I think is a ludicrously wrong decision. You have two options. You go into diplomacy, you try to decrease tension, or you openly say, no, we have become a part of this aggression carried out by Israel and the United States, as we know by now. I think this is wrong. And I am not sure, or I'm pretty much sure, that the population in Europe does not want to be confronted by another war. We have the Ukraine situation, we have an economic crisis. It's really not the paradise as it used to be, perhaps. And now perhaps the entire Middle East and the Gulf might explode, God forbid. This is exactly what the population does not want. And this is actually a litmus test for our elected leaders in Berlin, in Paris, and in London to say, stop it. And if we have anything to say still on the world stage, instead of leaving everything to the United States of America, we should now make sure that this bloodshed, before it gets worse, will end. The public opinion is not in favor. Only last night, a poll came out in Germany, and only 1/5 of the population approved of the so-called preemptive strikes, and 4/5 rejected it. This is public opinion as we speak in Germany.
Mr. Jürgens, Israel says it has launched an offensive campaign against Hezbollah. Are we seeing the opening of a full northern front? And could simultaneous conflicts with Iran and Hezbollah overstretch Israel militarily and politically?
Yes, that would be my first reaction. Trying to not only invade, if that is the right word, via preemptive strikes, first Iran and then Lebanon, even the Israeli military will be outstretched at some point. And even if allies, including the United States of America, perhaps even the United Kingdom, help with surveillance, help with weapons, help with machinery, you will not see that Israel can hold on to this. We talk a lot about timeframes. I don't see it, same like Iran, that it can go on for longer than 1 or 2 weeks. And eventually, and there's always light at the end of the tunnel, even in a shockingly sad situation, you would think that even the leaders in Israel will realize, if we have only enemies around the world, bar the United States and a few EU countries, then actually our days of dominance might be numbered sooner than we would expect. That would be too optimistic to think after Palestine and Gaza and now Iran and yes, Hezbollah and Lebanon. But running a country like a war machine and forgetting about all the issues which their own population actually are worried about, it would not be a strategy which would last long. Some said it already yesterday. Could this be the end game for Israel's war machine? Again, I'm not that optimistic. But in particular, allies with a certain past, and in particular, my own Germany, although speaking from London, you would need to roll up your sleeves and simply tell them, we know the Holocaust happened. We know how badly the Jewish people suffered, but this does not give you the right to actually photocopy it. I called it in another article yesterday, has Israel started to become a copy-paste state of exporting terror and attacking sovereign nations? This is one point, very frank. Secondly, of course, since we are in Azerbaijan, so to speak, via hybrid means, I think your fine nation is in a very interesting position, same as Turkey, to become perhaps a mediator, not only being geopolitically and geographically close, plus the Caspian Sea. In general terms, what is needed now is proactive diplomacy, and I think Baku, Ankara, Spain, hopefully many more, might actually pull together and pull into the right direction. Hoping.
Klaus Jørgens, political analyst with Economy First Limited. Thank you very much for joining us from London and for your insights during this critical moment. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, after the break, we'll look at the major stories from the region.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Turkey has increased the security level for its flagged vessels in the Strait of Hormuz following reports that Iran may be restricting ship movements in the vital waterway. The country's General Directorate of Maritime Affairs urged mariners to follow navigation warnings closely and, if needed, maintain contact with the main search and Rescue Coordination Center. The move comes amid rising regional tensions after US and Israeli strikes on Iran and Tehran's retaliation. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has expressed condolences following the death of Iran's supreme leader amid escalating regional tensions. Ankara has also taken precautionary security measures at sea, while stepping up diplomatic contacts as concerns grow over a wider conflict.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan expressed his deep sorrow over the death of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, amid ongoing attacks on Iran by Israel and the United States. In a social media post late Sunday, Erdogan conveyed Turkey's condolences to the Iranian people and said Ankara would continue working with regional partners and allies to help restore peace and stability. He stressed that diplomacy should remain the primary path forward and called for an end to the expanding regional conflict. Amid the steadily escalating tensions, Turkey has also taken precautionary measures. The General Directorate of Maritime Affairs has announced that the security level for Turkish-flagged vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz had been raised to level 3, the highest alert level. The move followed reports that Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps had restricted the passage of ships through the strategic waterway, one of the world's most vital choke points for the transport of oil. A spokesman for Turkey's foreign ministry said that regional developments were being closely monitored, especially regarding the safety of Turkish nationals abroad. On the diplomatic front, President Erdogan held a series of phone calls over the weekend with international leaders, including U.S. President Donald Trump, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and the leaders of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait to discuss the crisis. The U.S. Embassy in Ankara, meanwhile, has issued a security alert warning that regional tensions and negative perceptions of U.S. foreign policy could trigger anti-American demonstrations in Turkey. Authorities continue to watch developments closely as the situation unfolds. This is Adam Mara for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Turkey says day trip crossings halted at Iranian border. Turkey's trade minister said on Monday that day trip passenger crossings at 3 Turkish customs gates at the Iranian border have been mutually suspended, but Turkey is allowing its own citizens and third country nationals to enter from Iran. Minister Ömer Bolat said in a statement on X that Iran was permitting its own citizens to enter Iran via Turkey, adding that commercial cargo transits at all 3 gates continued under controlled conditions. Foreign nationals from 19 countries are being evacuated from Iran into Azerbaijan via the Astara border as regional tensions escalate. Nearly 200 people have crossed since Saturday, with more departures expected in the coming days. The evacuations follow U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran and Tehran's retaliatory missile attacks across the region. Our correspondent Gulcin Kocalieva reports more.
Foreign nationals from 19 countries are being evacuated from Iran through the Astara border into Azerbaijan amid rising regional tensions. Since Saturday, around 192 people have crossed into Azerbaijan, including 50 Chinese nationals and citizens from France, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Tajikistan, the UAE, Jordan, Qatar, Bangladesh, the Philippines, and Nepal. Over the past day, another 123 foreign nationals representing 17 countries have entered through this checkpoint. Russia's embassy in Baku confirmed that 39 of its citizens have already been evacuated, while roughly 500 remain on the list for departure. The UK government has issued guidance for British nationals seeking to cross into Azerbaijan via the land border with Iran. Crossings may be possible with special authorization coordinated through the embassy. These evacuations follow the strikes by the United States and Israel on Iran, with Tehran responding with missile attacks on Israeli territory and U.S. military bases in Gulf countries. Several regional states have temporarily closed their airspace as the situation remains fluid. Evacuation operations at the Astara border are ongoing, and updates will be provided as the situation develops. Gulcin Kocalieva, Nijat Kasımov, A News.
Kazakhstan has reacted to the rapidly unfolding crisis in the Middle East, issuing diplomatic messages to key regional partners, while at the same time dealing with the impact of the conflict on its own citizens abroad. Our correspondent reports from Almaty.
President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, has sent personal messages to the leaders of the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain and Kuwait, expressing support and solidarity with the peoples of these countries amid growing challenges. He condemned military actions undermining the sovereignty and security of states. Kazakhstan considers friendly and confirmed readiness to provide assistance while maintaining working contacts at the highest level. At the same time, authorities are focused on the safety of Kazakh citizens in the region. According to official data, 96 Kazakhstanis are currently in Iran, with diplomats preparing their evacuation via land routes. Another sensitive situation is unfolding in Dubai, where thousands of Kazakh tourists remain stranded after drone attacks on the city and its airports. Preliminary estimates suggest around 15,000 Kazakhstanis are currently in Dubai. The confrontation involving Iran, the United States and Israel is now moving beyond the Persian Gulf. For Central Asia and Kazakhstan, this is not distant geopolitics. Experts warn that prolonged instability could affect energy markets, trade routes, migration and regional security, increasing pressure on foreign policy decisions. Iran is strategically important for Kazakhstan as both a market and a key link in the North-South transport corridor designed to provide the shortest route to the Persian Gulf and Indian markets. And analysts note that while an open conflict would make transit through Iran high risk, a potential change of regime in Tehran could lead to the lifting of sanctions and open for Kazakhstan the most direct access to the world's oceans. Fariza Kalimurdina, Almaty, A News.
Military clashes between Afghanistan and Pakistan have intensified with airstrikes and ground fighting reported along the border. Civilians and armed forces on both sides have been affected.
The conflict between Afghanistan and Pakistan has escalated sharply over the past 4 days. Pakistan says its forces have killed more than 400 Afghan militants and injured over 580 in recent border clashes. Pakistani officials say nearly 200 outposts were destroyed, 31 positions captured, and 185 tanks, vehicles, and artillery systems targeted. Pakistan says its airstrikes have hit at least 46 locations across Afghanistan. Afghanistan, in turn, says 55 Pakistani soldiers have been killed, with 2 military bases and 19 outposts captured during the latest operations. Afghan forces deployed anti-aircraft defences on Sunday to repel Pakistani jets, including what officials described as a thwarted strike on the former Bagram airbase north of Kabul. Explosions have been heard in Kabul, while Pakistan is reported to hold a 32 square kilometre section of Afghan territory in the south. Civilian casualties have also been reported, including women and children, as mortar fire and drone strikes continue across multiple provinces. Diplomatic efforts have so far failed to halt the violence. Ceasefire talks previously mediated by Qatar and Turkey produced temporary agreements, but Islamabad has rejected renewed dialogue. Pakistani officials insist military operations will continue until their objectives are met.
For the 5th straight day, Afghan and Pakistani forces have been exchanging fire along the shared border in a sharp escalation of tensions between the two countries. Both sides accuse the other of carrying out cross-border strikes, including air and drone attacks. Our correspondent Tamim Bahiz has the details from Kabul.
Clashes have been reported across several provinces along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border after Afghan Defense Forces launched what they described as retaliatory attacks on Pakistani security outposts. Kabul say its response came after Pakistan carried out airstrikes inside Afghanistan, allegedly targeting militant sanctuaries. Afghan officials claim civilians were killed in those strikes and have vowed retaliation, calling the attacks a violation of Afghanistan's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Since the retaliation began, both sides say they have inflicted heavy casualties on each other, though those claims cannot be independently verified. Anti-aircraft guns were heard in Kabul over the weekend, as Afghan officials said that Pakistani aircrafts have entered its airspace and conducted several strikes in several provinces, including areas near the capital, Kabul. In turn, Afghanistan's Ministry of National Defense says it has carried out drone strikes inside Pakistan. However, there has been no confirmation of casualties from those operations. Pakistan accuses Kabul of harboring militants from the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, allegation the Kabul government has consistently denied. With earlier mediation efforts by Qatar, Turkey and Saudi Arabia failing to ease tensions, the situation remains volatile, raising concerns of further escalation between the two neighbors. Tamim Bahiz in Kabul, A News.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the rapidly escalating Afghanistan-Pakistan conflict after reported airspace violations and clashes near Kabul. See you shortly.
And welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you. In a complex world, clarity is power. 2 hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
Welcome back to A News. Explosions were heard in Kabul as Taliban forces say they opened fire on Pakistan military jets entering Afghan airspace. The Taliban claim Pakistani aircraft attempted to strike Bagram Air Base, as both sides now speak openly of war amid escalating border clashes and failed diplomacy. To help us understand the military, political and regional implications of this rapidly escalating conflict, I'm now joined by Faisal Shah, a political analyst and retired Rear Admiral, speaking to us from Islamabad, Pakistan. Mr. Faisal Shah, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So, Admiral Shah, how serious is this moment? Are we witnessing the start of a sustained Pakistan-Afghanistan military conflict?
Thank you for having me in your program. I think this is very unfortunate between two neighbors, and who would understand more than you, who have been fighting with Armenia for years. We just don't want to have our neighbors with enmity against us, and this is what we have been trying to make Taliban regime understand, that this is not how we can live forever. You see, Pakistan is confronted with a new wave of terrorism, and most of it is being emanated from Afghanistan. So we have time and again asked Afghan Taliban regime to ensure that their territory is not used against Pakistan. We have contacted them directly. We have contacted them indirectly through Qatar, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia also. And we have, in last October 2025, we carried out surgical strikes against the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan's hideouts inside Afghanistan. And we made it very clear, not only to Afghanistan, but all the regional countries, that if Afghan territory is used against us, we will be bound to take care of it. Now, you need to understand that our counter-terrorism strategy has two fronts. One is the internal front, the other is the external front. On the internal front, we are hellbound, negotiating it, addressing it, and fighting together. But if we don't take care of the external front, from the places from where this terrorism is emanating, then there is no outcome, desired outcome from the internal front fighting. So we have been asking about Taliban regime, and in fact, we are doing it very precisely. We are doing it in their favor, because if they are unable to stop these terrorists, Pakistan will do that.
Admiral Shah, what does Pakistan risk by allegedly sending fighter jets into Afghan airspace? And how credible are Taliban claims that they activated missile and air defense systems?
You see that we have targeted the military post of Afghan Taliban regime, because they attacked us on Thursday night. And we have also targeted the hideouts of Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, which are well inside Afghanistan. So I have all the facts and figures, what has been there so far. There have been 415 deaths on site of Afghanistan, both Afghan Taliban regime's military as well as the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan elements. And there are more than 600 injured people. We have destroyed there about 182 checkposts, and 31 checkposts are in possession of Pakistani troops. And around 186 tanks and artillery pieces and APCs have been destroyed by Pakistan Air Force and Pakistan Army. And there have been 42 places where Pakistan Air Force has carried out strikes inside Afghanistan, and these have been very pinpoint strikes. But Afghan Taliban regime does not have the means to counter Pakistan air assault through their air defense system. That's a very limited air defense system that they have, and Pakistani jets don't close into that.
Admiral Shah, why is Bagram Air Base such a strategic and symbolic target in this confrontation? And could former U.S. interest in Bagram could be influencing regional calculations today?
Bagram Air Base is important because there are some Afghan Taliban regime military bases are there. There are military installations over there, so it is important to destroy its command and control setup and to tell Afghan Taliban regime that they cannot use this facility against Pakistan, number one. Number two, U.S. interest will not be hurt in the region because if they want to have this Bagram Air Base, they are going to negotiate it with Afghan Taliban regime, and if both agree, they can have that air base, as President Trump has been saying. Pakistan has nothing to do with that. Pakistan is just focusing on its objectives, which are counter-terrorism in nature.
So why have mediation efforts by Saudi Arabia and Qatar failed so far? And what impact could this fighting have on regional stability, especially for Central Asia and the Gulf?
You see, Pakistan has had only 1 point agenda. 1 point agenda only, that Afghanistan territory should not be used against Pakistan, and Tehreek-e-Taliban of Afghanistan should ensure that. This is the only demand we have made towards them. And we just ask them to write it down, document it, so that it remains as a proof. Verbally, it will not be a proof anymore, and they can actually turn their backs on it anytime. So all the mediators like Turkey, like Qatar, like Saudi Arabia, all were asking Afghan Taliban regime to write it down. That's 1 point agenda. If I tell you, on 23rd February, Russian Foreign Ministry issued a report about Afghanistan, and they have said that there are 23,000 terrorists active in Afghanistan right now. 23,000. Most of them belong to Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, who are carrying out their activities against Pakistan. Their number is up to 7,000, which can be more, but approximately 7,000. So there is a proof. International community has that proof. And if we let Afghanistan remain like this, it can become hotbed of terrorism anytime sooner. And this terrorism can spill over to Central Asian republics also, to Russia also, to Iran also, to Gulf also. So this is why Pakistan is so concerned about it and has been asking its neighbors and regional countries to look into this problem and fix it.
Faisal Shah, thank you very much for your insights and for helping us break down these fast-moving and highly dangerous developments. We appreciate you joining us today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all we have for the hour. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned to A News for more updates.